The emergency strips cast the observation deck in a sick amber glow. Maeve O'Shea stepped over a collapsed rack without looking down. She had mapped this route in her head for 3 hours. Every turn, every sealed hatch, every dead-end corridor. Behind her, Zale's breathing was too fast. She heard it through the suit comlink. "Still picking up that vibration," he said. "Lower decks, hull breach warning on the panel." "It has been a hull breach warning for 60 years. The station is dead. Nothing down there matters." She stopped at the research vault door. The seal was intact. Red emergency tape crossed the access panel, and the lettering beneath it had faded to illegibility. She pulled a pry bar from her belt and wedged it into the seam. Zale took a step back. Should we have Ives look at it first? Ives was not with them. Ives was in the medical bay 2 decks up, running a diagnostic on a blood scanner she had rebuilt from scrap. She would stay there until called. Maeve leaned into the pry bar. The seal gave with a screech of tortured metal, and the door swung inward. The vault was a cube 4 meters on each side, its walls lined with empty shelves. In the center of the floor sat a pedestal of black alloy, stark and cold under her helmet lamp. Resting on it was a single object, a dull metallic sphere the size of a human skull. Its surface was a network of hairline fractures, fine as spun glass. From within these cracks, a faint indigo glow pulsed, a slow and steady beat like a sleeping heart. Zale's breathing stopped. Maeve stepped inside. The air felt different, heavier. She knelt in front of the pedestal and did not touch the sphere. She studied the fractures, the pulse pattern, the way the glow moved through the cracks like blood through capillaries. She looked at the display. "What is it?" She picked it up. The weight was wrong. The sphere should have massed maybe 3 kilograms. It felt like 10 and something else. A vibration did not travel through her hand the way it should have. It resonated in her teeth, her jaw, her skull. She said nothing. She carried it out of the vault and walked toward the auxiliary power junction. "Maeve," Zale's voice was thin, "the sphere is warm. It is drawing power, something in the station's ambient grid. What is it doing?" She did not answer. She reached the power junction and crouched beside a panel she had already opened on her way in. She had stripped the casing and exposed the primary trunk lines. Now she pulled a length of scavenged cable from her pack and began stripping the insulation with her teeth. Zale watched her. His hands trembled, she noticed but did not comment. She twisted the exposed copper around the sphere's surface. The fractures shifted. The indigo light brightened. She shoved the other end of the cable into the junction's main tap and twisted it tight. The station's lights flickered. The sphere drank power, not like a device drawing current, like a creature drinking. The hull groaned, the emergency strips dimmed and then recovered and then dimmed again. The cable in Maeve's hand went cold, then hot, then cold again. She did not let go. The door behind her slid open. Ives stood in the frame, her patch over her left eye catching the amber light. She opened her mouth to speak. Her eyes went wide. She clutched her head and dropped to her knees. The word she gasped was quiet. "Quiet." She said it again, softer, "Quiet." A third time, a whisper. Zale moved toward her. "Ives, Ives, what is happening?" Ives looked up. Her face was pale. Her good eye was wet. Her mouth formed the word a 4th time, and no sound came out. Her lips shaped the 5th, "Quiet." Maeve did not move. She watched Ives's synthetic eye. She knew that eye. Ives had built it herself from a salvaged sensor array and a medical-grade implant processor. The eye could see a broader spectrum than any human retina. It could resolve heat patterns from 3 kilometers. It could track a moving target across 4 different light bands simultaneously. Ives was not in pain. Ives was missing something she never knew she had. "The sphere is silencing a frequency," Maeve said. Her voice was flat. The eye was receiving something, a carrier wave, a signal, something constant, something you have been hearing your entire life without knowing it. Ives nodded. Her throat worked. Her lips moved, but no sound came. A proximity alarm screamed. Boz's voice came over the ship's intercom, calm and measured. "Maeve, a vessel has emerged from occultation behind the local gas giant. No transponder, stealth configuration. Design matches Kreth ship-of-the-line architecture." Maeve looked at the sphere in her hands. The indigo fractures pulsed. The vibration hummed in her teeth. She understood. The sphere had been drawing power from the station's ambient grid. The station had been emitting a signal for 60 years. A low-level broadcast. A whisper, like a dying light in the deep dark. The sphere had stopped connecting to that grid and started drinking directly from the junction line Maeve had tapped. And the signal had stopped. The station had gone quiet. And the Kreth ship had come to investigate the silence. Boz, how long until they reach weapons range? 43 seconds at current velocity. Correction, they have already fired. The first energy bolt punched through the hull 40 meters to Maeve's left. The floor bucked. The decompression alarm screamed a single long note, and the air sucked out of the corridor with a howl. The howl cut through the emergency strips and the flickering lights and the sound of Ives gasping for breath in a room still sealed. Maeve grabbed Ives by the collar and dragged her toward the airlock. Zale was already at the door, plasma cutter in his hand, his lucky wrench forgotten on the deck behind him. The station began to die a second death. The ghost ship vomited noise into the void. 1,000 false signatures bloomed across the debris field like a stranger's constellation. Freighters and fighters and civilian liners broadcast distress signals. Each one screamed a different transponder code in a different language. Each one cried out on a different frequency. The Kreth warship stopped mid-pursuit. It hung there, rotating slowly, as its sensors tried to untangle the impossible. Maeve watched the tactical plot on the main display. The Kreth ship had not fired. It had not moved. It was still trying to decide which of the 1,000 ghosts was real. Zale's voice cracked. They're frozen, they actually fell for it. They rely on sensors, Maeve said. They have to trust what they see. She touched the console. Boz, trajectory plot into the debris field, maximum burn. The AI's voice came back flat and calm. The vector will take us through a collision corridor with approximately 43 registered impacts. 2 of those impacts will be catastrophic. I know. You are choosing debris over an open engagement. I am choosing to survive. Maeve pressed her palm to the authentication plate. Execute. The ship lurched. The fusion core screamed as it redirected power to the engines. Forward thrust threw Maeve against her harness, and the hull began to sing. A high metallic whine climbed into something closer to pain than sound. Something broke loose in the cargo bay. The impact shuddered through the deck plates like a hammer strike. Then another. Maeve did not look at the damage report. She kept her eyes on the tactical plot. The Kreth warship had found its answer. It was following. It was faster. It was better armed. It was bleeding distance between them at a rate Maeve did not need Boz to calculate. She watched the numbers fall on the plot. Contact in 14 minutes, then 12, 11. She reached down and lifted the sphere from its cradle on the deck. It pulsed indigo against her palm, still warm, still hungry. Boz, she said, can this be keyed to a broadcast frequency? A pause, barely a microsecond, but Maeve had known the AI long enough to recognize hesitation. Yes, the sphere draws power as a function of field radius. Converting the draw to a directed broadcast would require routing energy through the comm array. The array can handle the load. The ship cannot. Tell me the number. Life support will shut down for 20 minutes. The fusion core will need to dump all non-essential systems to sustain the broadcast. This includes atmospheric recycling and temperature regulation and gravity plating. Maeve looked at Ives. The medic was strapped into a crash couch with her eyes closed. Her breath came shallow and fast. She had not spoken since the vault. Vent the cargo bay, Maeve said. Zale turned. His face was pale under the red emergency lights. What? Vent the cargo bay. The bay is life support mass. We dump the atmosphere, we save enough power to keep the bridge habitable for 6 people for 20 minutes. We are 6 people. There's salvage in that bay, equipment, food. Food does not matter if we are dead. Zale's jaw tightened. He turned back to his console and his hands moved over the controls. A warning chime ran through the ship. A long descending tone Maeve felt in her chest. Then the hull groaned around them and a distant roar faded into silence. Cargo bay is vented, Zale said. His voice was flat. Atmosphere gone, bay doors sealed. Maeve nodded once. She lifted the sphere and carried it to the comm array relay. Her fingers moved across the junction panel, rerouting cables she had helped install 3 months ago on a station now drifting cold and dead. The work was automatic, precise. She did not think about what she was doing until it was done. She stepped back. The sphere sat in the relay cradle like it had always belonged there. The indigo lines across its surface pulsed faster, brightened. Boz, Maeve said, activate. The lights went out. The screens died. The hum of the ventilation cut. The gravity plating released her and she drifted for a breathless moment before her boots caught the deck magnets. The silence was absolute. No fans, no consoles, no fusion hum, just the sound of her own blood in her ears. And then the sphere flared. Light poured from it, not indigo now. White. A white so bright it threw shadows through the hull. Maeve felt the field pass through her like a pressure change in her ears, like descending in a fast elevator. Her teeth ached. The deck shivered under her boots. She looked at the viewport. The Kreth warship had stopped. It hung in the debris field like a monument to something dead. Its running lights were out. Its weapon ports were dark. No engines, no power signature, no heat bloom, nothing. It drifted with the slow tumble of a corpse in deep water. "Bring the sphere down to 40%, Maeve said. "Restore life support." The light dimmed, the fans kicked on. The gravity plating caught with a jolt and slammed her back to the deck. She was already moving toward the airlock. "Zale, suit up." He followed without a word. The Kreth ship was bigger than she had expected. Its hull was smooth and dark, scaled like the creature built it. The docking collar did not fit any standard they had. Maeve jury-rigged the seal with magnetic clamps and a prayer. The inner hatch opened onto a corridor. The corridor smelled of burnt metal and something else, something green and sharp. The crew were dead. She found them at their stations, slumped over consoles, sprawled across deck plates. No wounds, no blood. Their eyes were open and their mouths were parted like they had stopped existing in the middle of a sentence. The sphere had silenced them. Their psionic network collapsed inward and took their minds with it. Maeve stepped over a body and kept moving. She found the bridge at the end of a long corridor lined with cracked display panels. The hatch was jammed. She braced her shoulder against it and pushed until the metal groaned and gave way. He was pinned against a collapsed bulkhead. Kreth officer, slate-gray scales, vertical pupils. The pupils dilated independently in the low light. Blood ran from a gash across his ribs, dark green and sharp with copper. His tongue flicked out once, twice, tasting the air. He looked at her. His eyes moved from her face to the sphere in her hand, to the plasma cutter on Zale's belt. He took in every detail. The stillness of a creature learned to survive by reading predators. Then he spoke. "You are supposed to be dead." The words were trade speech, heavily accented. The consonants came from a place without natural use. Maeve stood very still. The air in the corridor was cold. The blood on the deck was pooling at her feet. She had hoped it was a mistake, an accident. A misaligned patrol grid stumbled onto a derelict station and opened fire because protocol said to. But he knew what humans were, he knew Earth existed, and he knew it was gone. The Kreth had not attacked by accident. They had known exactly what they were destroying. And in that cold, silent moment, Maeve understood the final, terrible truth. The Kreth did not attack because humanity was a threat. They had not burned Earth out of fear or out of rage. They had done it simply because it was in their way. The deck plates hummed a low vibration through Vethral's spine. He cataloged it. Mining vessel engines, jury-rigged fusion core, inefficient frequency harmonics. The harness held his wrists in a magnetic field. The field pulsed every 4 seconds, a reminder of captivity. The human woman sat 3 paces away. She held a cup of something dark. Steam rose from it. She had not drunk from it in the time Vethral had been awake. Her name was Maeve O'Shea. The AI had told him. The AI spoke through a speaker in the ceiling with a flat, almost pleasant voice. Vethral studied her. She blinked too often. Her fingers moved when she was not speaking, a thumb rubbing against a forefinger in a small, repetitive circle. Her breathing was shallow and fast. She was emotional. Humans were emotional. They spoke too quickly, their words running together at the edges. They touched each other. He had seen the younger one, Zale, touch her shoulder twice during the walk to this room. Unnecessary, primitive. He straightened his spine against the restraint harness. "I am an intelligence officer of the Kreth Collective," he said. "You have made a strategic error by taking me alive. I carry a subcutaneous tracker. A rescue vessel is already en route. If you release me now, I can offer you Federation credits, safe passage to neutral space, amnesty from any future prosecution." He let the words hang. They were standard hostage protocol. Offer them a way out. Make them feel clever for accepting. Maeve O'Shea looked at him. She did not blink. Her thumb stopped moving. "I want to know about the attack on Earth," she said. Her voice was flat, not angry, not afraid, flat. "I have no knowledge of any attack on Earth." She watched him. "Tell me about the attack on Earth." I was not assigned to that sector. I have no data regarding. Tell me about the attack on Earth. Her voice did not change pitch. She did not lean forward. She simply repeated the words as if he had not spoken at all. Vethral's tongue flicked out. A calculation tremor she noticed. Her eyes tracked the movement. I cannot give you information I do not possess. Tell me about the attack on Earth. He understood then. This was not an interrogation. She was not extracting data. She was performing a ritual. She would ask the same question until the question became the only thing in the room. She would wear down the space between his answers through sheer repetition. He had been trained for pain. He had been trained for threats. He had not been trained for this. Maeve O'Shea shifted her weight. She set the cup on the deck beside her chair. Tell me about the Federation, she said. Vethral blinked. The shift was sudden, a tactical pivot. The Federation is the governing body of 18 species across 42 star systems, he said. The words came easily. This was public knowledge. It maintains trade routes, diplomatic protocols, and mutual defense agreements. The Kreth hold a permanent seat on the High Council. Which species do not hold a seat? He paused. The question was unexpected. There are 53 non-aligned species, approximately 200 uncontacted or pre-contact civilizations. She nodded. Her thumb resumed its slow circle. The Kreth role in the Federation, what is it? We are stewards of information, intelligence coordination, threat assessment. You are spies, she said. He did not correct her. Who decides which species get a seat? The High Council votes. Unanimity is required for new. Who votes? The permanent members. She leaned back. The chair creaked under her weight. Permanent members, she repeated, and they vote unanimously. Yes. So no species already holding a seat would ever vote to give another species a seat. Vethral's pupils dilated independently, adjusting to the shift in the light, or the shift in the conversation. He could not separate the two. That is not how diplomacy. Does the Scareth have a seat? He hesitated. The Scareth are a junior partner. They can advise, they cannot vote. Yes. She nodded again. Her thumb moved faster. And the Selenith? They are not politically active. They lack interest in. The Zelix? No. The null entity? No. She listed them like she was reading a list. She had studied the Federation. She studied it before she captured him. She studied it while he was unconscious. Why do you care about the political structure of the Federation? The words came out sharper than he intended. You are a prisoner. You should be demanding tactical data, fleet positions, weak points. You are the one being interrogated. Maeve O'Shea smiled, a thin smile, a tired smile. I am not interrogating you, she said. Then what? Let me tell you a story. She settled herself in the chair, crossed her legs. The ship hummed around them. Somewhere in the ceiling, the AI waited in silence. There was once a fox, she said. A small fox, thin, hungry. A hunter came for her with a rifle and a pack of dogs. The fox ran. The dogs chased. The hunter followed. She was fast, but she was tired. The dogs were not tired. Vethral listened. His body was still. His tongue did not flick. The fox ran toward a river. The hunter laughed. He knew she would be trapped against the water, but the fox did not cross the river. She ran along the bank. She ran toward the hunter's own shadow. She paused. The hunter had not looked at his own shadow in years. He had not thought about where it fell. The fox ran into it. She disappeared. The hunter stopped. Confused, the dogs circled. They could not find her scent because she was standing where his shadow fell, and no one expects prey to hide in plain sight. Vethral's breathing had slowed. He forced it to stay even. The hunter went home. He told the story of the fox vanished. He told it many times. Each time he told it, the fox grew larger in the telling. Each time she became more clever, more dangerous. Eventually, he stopped hunting because he did not want to find her again. Maeve O'Shea stood up. She picked up her cup. It was still full. You can know you were captured by a primitive species from an extinct world. You can report, or you can tell them about the fox. She walked to the door. It hissed open. Keep thinking about it. She left. The door sealed. Vethral sat in the silence of the brig. The hum of the engines pressed up through the deck. His heartbeat was a steady bass rhythm in his chest, slower than a human's. He had always been proud of that. He was not proud now. She was not interrogating him. She was recruiting him. She was planting something in his mind. It would grow during the journey back to Federation space. It would change the shape of his report before he gave it. It would make him a better agent for her story than for his own. He would report the facts. He would mention the fox. The door clicked open again. Maeve O'Shea stood in the frame. She held a datapad in her hand. The screen glowed. "I have something for you," she said. The airlock cycled with a sound like a dying animal. Maeve stepped through and the station's atmosphere hit her. Dry, sterile, carrying the chemical tang of recycled oxygen and processor coolant. Her borrowed pressure suit was 2 sizes too large at the shoulders. She smelled her own sweat rising from the collar. Vethril walked behind her, unbound, under watch. Zale had his plasma cutter in his hand and his jaw set tight enough to crack a tooth. Alios met them in the main hall. The Scarath stood with his silver-blue feathers flat against his skull, his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes tracked Maeve the way a predator tracked wounded prey. Not hungry, calculating. "You brought the Kreth here," he said. His voice was a dry rasp. "I expected better judgment from a species fighting for survival." Maeve did not stop walking. "I brought a prisoner with information I needed. The warship was a complication." "You fired on a Federation vessel." "It shot first." Alios's feathers ruffled once, then flattened again. He was uncomfortable. Uncomfortable people made mistakes. The main hall opened around them. A wide dome of transparent alloy showed the surface of the moon beyond. A gray plain of impact craters and radio towers rising like skeletal fingers against the black. The station hummed with activity. Technicians at consoles, crew members moving between stations. A low psionic murmur threaded the air, barely perceptible, like a distant conversation you could not quite hear. Maeve had learned to notice the murmur. It was everywhere in Federation space. A constant psychic undertone, the background noise of a civilization grown dependent on telepathic coordination. She was going to turn it off. "I need to broadcast a message," she said, "to the entire system." Alios stopped walking. He turned to face her and his feathers lifted slowly, a display of warning. "That is not possible. This station relays diplomatic traffic only. I cannot authorize a system-wide broadcast without Federation Council approval." Maeve reached into the pouch at her belt. She pulled out the sphere. The metal was warm. The indigo fractures pulsed against her palm. The weight of it was wrong. Heavier than it should be, denser than physics allowed. Like holding a small star forgotten how to burn. Alios took a step back. His pupils contracted to pinpricks. "What is that?" "A negotiation tool." She placed the sphere on the floor in the center of the hall. The indigo light cast shadows against the polished deck plates. The psionic murmur in the air flickered, paused. The technicians at their consoles looked up, confused, one hand touching their temples. Maeve pressed her thumb against the surface. The sphere answered. It did not make a sound. It made an absence of sound. The psionic murmur collapsed into absolute silence. The crew members riding the current fell like puppets with cut strings. One collapsed over her console. Another slid from his chair and hit the deck. A sound echoed through the hall. Datapads clattered to the floor. A third crew member, a tall insectoid with segmented eyes, folded at the knees and went down without a word. Panic tore through the room. Someone screamed. A technician bolted for the corridor. Another grabbed a sidearm and aimed it at Maeve with trembling hands. She did not move. The silence was beautiful, a sudden terrible stillness like the universe holding its breath. The sphere pulsed. The indigo light rippled across the dome. "Stop it," Alios said. His voice was raw. He had both hands pressed to his temples. His feathers were slicked flat with distress. "Stop it now." Maeve looked at him. "I will," she said, "when I get what I want." She lifted the sphere. The silence eased. The psionic murmur returned in a slow trickle like water finding its way through a cracked dam. The crew members on the floor stirred. One of them sobbed. Alios stared at her. His chest heaved. His pupils were still tiny pinpricks in his amber eyes. Maeve did not wait for permission. She walked to the central console, pulled the comm access cable from its housing, and connected it to the sphere's base. The indigo fractures brightened. The console screen flickered and went steady. She opened a system-wide channel. "This is Maeve O'Shea," she said. "I am the last surviving human in known space. My species was attacked without warning, no declaration, no demand, no reason." She paused. The silence on the channel was absolute. "I am here to tell you your Federation is built on a lie. The Kreth burned my homeworld. They did it because they could. They did it because they thought no one would ever find out. She held the sphere up. This device can shut down every psionic network in your civilization, every telepathic command structure, every psychic relay. I am not threatening you. I am informing you. The technology exists. It works. I will give it to anyone asking. The channel erupted. Messages flooded in. Diplomatic codes, military frequencies, emergency hails. Elio stood frozen at the edge of the hall, his feathers lifting and flattening in a rhythm betraying his shock. The Kreth military responded within 3 hours. Their transmission was cold and formal. A Kreth officer with slate-gray scales and vertical pupils, a female judging by the pattern of her throat markings, stared into the camera with flat disinterest. The human known as Maeve O'Shea is a hostile agent, she said. The device she carries is stolen Kreth technology. She must be remanded to Kreth custody immediately. Any species harboring her will be considered complicit in an act of war. The Federation fractured. The Riven sent a message demanding the sphere be turned over to neutral arbitration. The Selenith sent no message at all. The Zelix delegation broadcast a statement supporting the Kreth and calling for Maeve's arrest. A smaller species, its name Maeve did not catch, transmitted a single line of text. "We want to talk." Elios found her 3 hours later. He stood in the doorway of the quarter she had been assigned. His feathers were ruffled in every direction. He looked like a bird caught in a storm. "What is your price?" he asked. Maeve set the sphere on the table beside her. It pulsed in slow rhythm, like a heartbeat made of light. She smiled, not a kind smile. "3 things," she said. "First, I want a ship with FTL capability, something fast, something able to outrun the Kreth." Elios nodded once, and second, a manufacturing license. I want the right to build hardware in Federation space, legally. His feathers lifted. "That is not something I can grant. You are the station commander. You have authority over local trade agreements. A manufacturing license falls under that authority if you define it as a salvage and repair operation." He stared at her. "You researched this." "I had time to read during the journey," she leaned back. "Third, I want an introduction to the Selenith." Elios went very still, his feathers flattened against his skull. "The Selenith are isolationists. They do not engage with organic species. They will engage with a species holding a weapon able to shut down their entire information network." Maeve tapped the sphere with one finger. The indigo light flared. "Make the introduction, Commander, or I will do it myself." He looked at her for a long moment. The recycled air cycled through the vents. The station hummed with the sound of processors and life support and the distant murmur of a civilization unsure what to do with her. "How long," Elios asked, "have you been planning this?" Maeve picked up the sphere. Its warmth spread through her palm. "Since the moment I realized no one was coming to save us." Elios turned and walked out of the room. His feathers were still flat, his hands still clasped behind his back. He did not look at her again. But the door did not close behind him, and Maeve knew she had won. The heat pressed against Maeve's skin like a physical weight. It came from every direction at once, radiating off the molten metal channels carving through the rock floor in slow, luminous rivers. The Selenith home forge was a hollowed-out asteroid. The light inside was pure orange, the color of a furnace door left open. She kept her hands loose at her sides. The sphere sat in a padded case slung across her back. The vibration of it had shifted the moment she stepped through the airlock. A deeper resonance now, almost harmonic. The Selenith communicated in frequencies she could not hear. The sphere apparently could. Zale stood 2 paces behind her. He had his hand on the plasma cutter. The cutter was useless for intimidation against a silicon-based life form. The gesture mattered. It mattered to him. Zenthai rose from the refining pool like a shard of volcanic glass pushing through cooling lava. The Selenith Trade Overseer was a crystalline structure 3 meters tall, faceted and translucent. Light moved through its body in ripples of deep amber and violet. It had no face. It had no eyes. But when it stopped 3 meters from Maeve, the air hummed with attention. Maeve unsealed the case. She lifted the sphere and held it in both hands. The indigo light pulsed along the hairline fractures. The sphere vibrated against her palms. Not a rattle, but a slow, deep thrum. The thrum traveled up her arms into her chest. Zenthai's crystalline body shifted. A tone rang out, pure and sustained, like a glass bell struck once and allowed to sing. The sound resonated through the forge. The molten rivers rippled in response. The sphere answered, a lower note almost subsonic. Maeve felt it in her teeth. Zenthai's light patterns stabilized into a single steady pulse. The translator at Maeve's collar rendered the Selenith's modulated light into flat human speech. The frequency is correct. The voice paused. We have never encountered a material vibrating in sympathy with our primary resonance. Maeve turned the sphere slowly in her hands. It was hot now, but not painful. It was drinking the forge's ambient energy the way it had drunk the station's power grid. It does that, she said. It adapts to whatever environment it enters. Zenthai's faceted surface flickered through a sequence of colors. The translator produced nothing. Maeve waited. She had learned in the first negotiation. Silence is not a gap. Silence is pressure. The other species breaks first. Zenthai's light stabilized again. We want it. Maeve closed the case. She did it slowly, deliberately, letting the latches click one at a time. I thought you might. She straightened and met the shifting light patterns where a face would be. I want to trade the manufacturing schematics, not the sphere itself, the plans to build another one. The molten rivers hissed. The temperature in the chamber rose. Zenthai's body went dark for 2 full seconds. Then the light returned, slower, more deliberate, threaded with streaks of red. State your price. The words came out flat and practiced. Maeve had rehearsed this in the cargo bay with Boz for 3 hours. A shipyard slot, one of your orbital dry docks, fully equipped. Raw material allocation for 10 medium-class vessels. A small escort fleet, 6 combat-ready ships with Selenith crews operating under my tactical command. The silence stretched. The red streaks in Zenthai's body deepened to the color of cooling slag. Your request exceeds reasonable trade value. The manufacturing schematics for a single artifact do not justify a fleet. Maeve shook her head. She kept her voice low. You are calculating the value of the object. You should calculate the value of what it removes. She took a step closer. The heat pressed against her face. The Kreth control the stealth technology market, she said. They have held a monopoly for 400 cycles. Every species in the Federation pays their price. No one can match their signature suppression. No one builds a ship moving unseen. She tapped the case. This sphere does not suppress signatures. It suppresses something more fundamental. It makes the Kreth's entire information network unreliable. They trade on certainty. They trade on knowing where every ship is, what every cargo holds, what every ally says in private. This sphere removes certainty. The moment it goes active in a system, the Kreth cannot trust their own intelligence. Zenthai's light patterns shifted. The red streaks faded to a muted orange. You are describing a disruption of existing market dynamics. Maeve let a beat of silence pass. I am describing a market without a monopoly. When the Kreth lose their information advantage, every species competing with them gains a window. A shipyard slot costs you material and labor. A Kreth-free stealth market costs you nothing and returns profit for the next 1,000 cycles. The translator rendered Zenthai's next tone as a sound almost like a laugh. It was not a warm sound. You speak in terms of profit. You are not a species we expected to understand economic leverage. Maeve wiped sweat from her temple. Her thumb and forefinger rubbed together, a habit she could not break. I am an engineer. I understand leverage in any form. The heat in the chamber seemed to press harder. Zale shifted behind her. She heard his boots scrape on the stone. Zenthai's body went dark again. This time it lasted 5 seconds. When the light returned, it was a steady pale gold. We will build your ships. The escort fleet will be provided under these conditions. Selenith crews retain the right to withdraw from any engagement not threatening the Forge or its interests. You do not deploy the sphere within the Selenith home system without prior approval. You provide us with a prototype unit within 30 cycles. Maeve's heart hammered. She kept her face still. The first unit leaves my ship today, she said. You will have the full schematic package within 12 cycles. She held out her hand, a human gesture. The Selenith did not have hands. Zenthai's light flickered. A crystalline protrusion extended from its body, faceted and warm. It touched her palm. The contact was dry and smooth, like polished stone heated by sunlight. The agreement is sealed, Zenthai said. Maeve closed her fingers around the protrusion. It retracted. She turned and walked toward the airlock with Zale at her shoulder. The chill of the corridor hit her like a wall. The air was thin and cold. It tasted like machine oil and recycled nitrogen. She leaned against the bulkhead and let her breath out in a long, shaking stream. Zale stood beside her. His voice was low. "Did that just happen?" Maeve nodded. She rubbed her thumb against her forefinger. "We just started a war." He did not argue. He stood there, broad and solid, his hand resting on the plasma cutter. The cutter had never fixed anything. Her comm pinged, she tapped it. Maeve, Vethral's voice tight and clipped. "Something has changed." She straightened. Changed how? "The Kreth main fleet has been recalled to the homeworld. All forward deployments. Every ship able to reach the homeworld in less than 40 cycles has reversed course." The corridor felt colder. "Why?" A pause. When Vethral spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost uncertain. "They are not running from you, Maeve. They are running from something else. Something emerged in the deep void beyond the fourth arm. The Kreth have a word for it, a name from our oldest myths. The closest translation is the unseen tide, a term for a wave that scours the shore clean without ever being seen." Maeve's hand moved to the case on her back. The sphere thrummed against her shoulder, warm and silent. Vethral's voice came through one last time. "The Kreth are afraid. They have never been afraid of anything." The low rumble of the flagship's engines vibrated through the deck and up into Vethral's spine. He stood at a navigation console on the bridge, his claws resting on the polished metal surface, his vertical pupils tracking the holographic display. The nebula stretched around them in swirls of violet and ochre gas, beautiful and empty. Then the first silencer pulse hit. Vethral felt it as pressure behind his eyes, a sudden absence where the low hum of his crew's psionic presence should have been. The bridge went quiet in a way sound could not explain. Kreth officers spent their entire lives bathed in the background whisper of other minds. They fell silent. Their hands stopped moving. Their heads turned. They looked at each other with the blank confusion of creatures never acquainted with loneliness. Fleet Commander Varen stood at the center of the bridge, his darkened scales catching the amber light from the tactical array. He was old. His voice carried the weight of decades. He spoke without turning. "Report." The comms officer shook herself. Her tongue flicked once, twice. "3 ships in the forward line have lost coordination, Commander. Their captains are signaling confusion. They do not know where to fire." Varen's jaw tightened. "They are disoriented. The silencer field does not kill, it only silences. Our ships still outnumber theirs 3-1. Vethral said nothing. He touched the datapad Maeve had given him. It was still warm from her hand. He had read it in full during his first hour of freedom. The attack logs from Earth were clinical. Kreth ships arranged in formation. Kreth weapons cycling. Kreth commands transmitted in clear protocol. No ultimatum, no declaration, no demand for surrender, just fire and silence and the long drift of a world burning. He had read the names of the Kreth captains giving the orders. Varen's name was there. The display flickered. A new signal flooded the tactical array, not weapons telemetry, not targeting data. A broadcast from the human ship pushed through every open channel. Vethral heard Maeve's voice. "My name is Maeve O'Shea. I am the last human you will ever hear speak." The bridge froze, every officer turned. The broadcast was not encrypted. It was not even military protocol. It was a woman's voice, level and calm, carrying a weight. The weight made Vethral's stomach clench. "You did not know my species. You did not give us a chance to surrender. Your ships came to Earth without a word. You burned every city. You killed every man, woman, and child you found. You did it because you could. You did it because you believed no one would ever answer." Varen's claws scraped against the console. "Cut that signal." The comms officer shook her head. "She cannot. The signal is piggybacking on our own tactical relay. To cut her is to lose targeting data for half the fleet." Then the display changed. Vethral watched the images roll across the bridge's main holographic field. Thermal scans from the attack. City grids going dark in sequence. Atmospheric signatures dropping from habitable to toxic in under an hour. The last signal from Earth. A single automated distress beacon repeated the same phrase until the batteries died. No survivors, no response, no hope. The bridge was silent, not the silence of the silencer field. A different silence. The silence of minds trying to refuse what their eyes had already accepted. Maeve's voice returned. "I have the names of every Kreth commander authorizing the attack. I have the ship IDs and the firing orders. I know who gave the commands. I know who carried them out. This is not revenge. This is a reckoning." She paused. Vethril counted the seconds. 4, 5, 6. Here is my offer. Any ship standing down will not be fired upon. Any captain leaving formation will be granted safe passage. Any officer transmitting the full Kreth war logs to the Federation will be given asylum. You do not have to die for a lie. Varen turned. His eyes found Vethril. The old commander's voice was low and cold. You were on her ship. You spoke to her. What did you tell her? Vethril did not look away. I told her the truth, Commander. I told her we attacked without cause. We followed orders. We never asked why. Varen's claws dug into the console. The metal groaned. The tactical display shifted again. 3 ships in the forward line had powered down their weapons. Their transponder codes changed from combat-ready to neutral. Then 2 more. Then 7. A captain's voice broke through the comms, shaky and raw. Commander, the human is offering amnesty. She named you. She named your ship. She said you gave the order for the second wave. Is that true? Varen did not answer. The bridge watched him. The crew waited. The silence stretched until it became its own accusation. Varen's voice came out flat. Retreat. Pull the fleet back to the rally point beyond the nebula. The comms officer hesitated. Commander, the human is broadcasting our withdrawal. Let her. We will reform and return. Vethril stepped forward. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. You will not return, Commander. You have already lost. Varen's head snapped toward him. The old scales around his throat pulsed with heat. You are speaking above your station, Vethril. I am speaking above my species. Vethril lifted the data pad. He pressed his thumb to the activation surface. The device hummed once and connected to the flagship's primary data relay. Varen lunged. The old commander moved faster than his age should have allowed, but Vethril was already speaking. Transmitting the full Kreth war logs to every ship in the system. All Federation channels, all civilian relays, all archives, the attack logs, the targeting data, the chain of command, every order, every signature, every choice. Varen's claws closed around Vethril's throat. The old commander's breath was hot against his scales. You have doomed us. Vethril did not struggle. He did not close his eyes. He looked at the old commander. He saw the creature ordering a world burned because it was easier than negotiating. No, Commander, I have freed us. Varen's grip tightened. Vethril's vision began to narrow at the edges. The bridge grew dim. The low hum of the engines faded. Then the security team pulled Varen away. Vethril collapsed to the deck, gasping, his claws scraping against the metal as he pulled air back into his chest. The comms officer stared at him. Her tongue flicked once, slow. The logs are transmitting. Every ship in the system has received them. The Federation is already issuing statements. Vethril pushed himself upright. He did not look at the screen. He looked at his own hands. The claws were still stained with the dust of the human's captured ship. He wondered if the dust contained fragments of Earth. He wondered if he would ever stop wondering. The display flickered one last time. A new signal pushed through, rooted from the edge of the nebula. It was Maeve's voice again, softer now, almost tired. Vethril, you made the right choice. He did not answer. The flagship drifted in the purple haze, its weapons cold, its crew silent, its commander in custody. Beyond the nebula, the silencers had already begun their slow approach toward the Kreth homeworld. Vethril closed his eyes and listened to the quiet. It was the first honest silence he had known. The Kreth homeworld went silent an hour later. The silencers had arrived in orbit. Maeve's fleet surrounded the cradle of the species, trying to erase hers. The council hall was an amphitheater of stone and light. Rows of delegates from 100 species rose in concentric arcs, their attention fixed on the single human woman standing alone at the center of the floor. The air was cool and carried the scent of living soil. Organic, fresh, nothing like the recycled atmosphere of ships and stations. Maeve O'Shea stood in plain civilian clothes. No weapons, no guards, no sphere. Alios stood to her right, his silver-blue feathers smoothed flat against his neck. He had argued for 12 hours to get her this moment. He had threatened to resign. He had played every political card he owned. Now she stood in the silence of the Federation's most sacred chamber, holding nothing but a data crystal. The Kreth delegation sat in a block near the front. Their scales were dull. Their postures were rigid. They had arrived stripped of military authority, their fleet commanders recalled, their intelligence network dismantled by the weight of Maeve's broadcast. They did not look at her. They looked at the floor. Maeve raised her hand. The chamber fell silent. She did not demand revenge. She did not demand territory. She did not point at the Kreth delegation and call for blood. She simply placed the data crystal on the central podium. The crystal caught the light and threw it back in a steady white beam. "This is the full schematic for the thought anchor," she said. "Materials, power requirements, field geometry, calibration protocols, everything we know." A murmur rippled through the amphitheater. Alios saw a dozen species lean forward. He saw a Xylos delegate with 3 separate brains computing the implications simultaneously. He saw the Kreth delegation go perfectly still. Maeve waited for the murmur to fade. "Humanity is not asking for power," she said. "We are asking for a seat at the table. We are asking for the right to be left alone. That is all." The silence following was not the silence of the anchor. It was the silence of 100 species trying to understand a creature giving away its only advantage. Alios understood because he had watched her for weeks. She was not naive. She was not desperate. She was doing something he still could not fully name. "We just gave you the power to destroy us," Maeve said. Her voice was tired but steady. "The guarantee we have is your trust." The Kreth delegation stirred. Their senior member, a scales-scarred elder named Thesic, rose to his feet. His voice was a low rasp. "You admit you have armed every world in this chamber against your own species." Maeve met his gaze. "Yes. You have placed your survival entirely in the hands of your former enemies." "Yes." Thesic's vertical pupils dilated. He could not read her. Alios could not read her either. He had learned humans were not transparent. Their faces lied. Their voices lied, but their actions told a truth they could not fake. "The Kreth delegation opposes this," Thesic said. "We will formally register." "You will sit down." The voice came from the left. Alios turned. The Selenith representative had risen, her crystalline form refracting the chamber light into a dozen sharp colors. She was old. She was respected. She had been the first to accept Maeve's manufacturing schematics. "The Kreth burned a world without cause," the Selenith said. "The Kreth lied to this council for 3 cycles. The Kreth stand here now and pretend they have moral authority to object." She turned her gaze on Thesic. "You will sit down before I remind you what your silence cost us all." Thesic sat. Maeve did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply waited. The debate lasted 3 days. Alios sat through every hour of it. He watched the council fracture and reform along lines he had never seen before. The old alliances cracked. The old enmities softened. The logic of Maeve's offer was unassailable. She had given them the tools to build their own anchors. She had given them the ability to silence any psionic threat, including her own. She had made herself vulnerable in a way no species in Federation history had ever dared. The Kreth delegation fought. They argued the anchor was a weapon of mass disruption. They argued humanity had demonstrated aggressive intent by using it. They argued granting membership to a species with no FTL capability and a population of fewer than 3,000 was absurd. But the argument collapsed under its own weight. The Kreth could not explain why they had attacked Earth. They could not explain why they had told the Council humanity was extinct. They could not explain why they had hidden the evidence for 40 years. Every objection they raised bounced off the single undeniable fact of their own betrayal. On the 3rd day, the Council voted. Humanity was granted provisional membership in the Federation. The Kreth war faction was isolated. Their military assets were frozen. Their intelligence network was placed under third-party oversight. 7 species immediately announced they would begin manufacturing their own thought anchors. 3 more requested trade negotiations with the human delegation. The vote itself was 72 in favor, 11 opposed, and 6 abstaining. Maeve O'Shea listened to the result without visible emotion. She thanked the council. She gathered her data crystal from the podium. She walked out of the hall. Alios followed her. The capital world was called Varathas. Its sky was a pale gold, its atmosphere rich with oxygen and the faint floral scent of 1 billion kilometers of living things. Maeve stepped through the council hall's main doors and walked onto the broad stone terrace overlooking the city below. She stopped at the railing. The wind moved through her hair. She closed her eyes. Alios stood beside her. He said nothing. After a long moment, Maeve opened her eyes. She looked at the horizon. "We are not alone anymore," she said. Alios's feathers shifted. "No, you are not. But we are still the last." He did not understand her meaning. He did not ask. Maeve turned away from the railing and walked back inside. The council hall hummed with the noise of 100 species trying to rebuild their understanding of the galaxy. She had given them the tools. She would let them decide what to build.